All right. So in part one, I was talking about knowledge, and second hour particularly was, I think, was really down on knowledge as a whole. And I want, that doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So there are positives to leaning in and proactively absorbing knowledge. It's not for everyone. Okay, it's definitely not for everyone. Some people have so much crap happening to them that life itself is burdening them and is damaging their knees, so to speak. They can't lift anymore. Their family is in turmoil. They may be suffering with health issues. They're in a state of chaos. They should not open up and learn about the Bataan Death March that happened, I think, in World War II or something. Someone's going to correct me on that one. This is too much weight. Just no, don't do that. Wait until you feel until your life goes back into equilibrium, and then once if you feel like, okay, I'm doing all right, and then if you want to do battle with life and help society carry large weights like the symbol of Atlas, then do it. So it's definitely not for everyone to uh, think or some might say overthink. Depends on how you're calibrated, but uh, yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about where that dividing line is in some cases. What is too much? Well, one indication, like I said, is if you're starting to get anxious, if you're starting to get depressed, if there are ideas if you're starting to feel like life is overwhelming, that's one indication that maybe you're thinking too much and that you should simplify your life and not add more chaos to it. Use thinking in order to solve your problems first before you start setting off in philosophy and history and such and uh, looking for battles that way. Um, so another thought is Maslow's hierarchy. In this, I'm not a huge. Some people put Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid, as basically their crucifix or religious symbol. They think that the Maslow's hierarchy explains human existence, and they think weird thoughts about it. But I think it has its role, and what it basically states is that everyone has basic individual or basic human needs that needs to be accounted for. You need to have food, shelter, water, and then as you have those, you can start focusing on friendships and self-actualization and being the best person you can be, and then part of which might be picking up a guitar. If you're starving to death, you can't pick up a guitar and learn how to play it for fun. So you have to take care of the base levels first, and you can work up to your individual capacity. So with that image in mind, it appears as though, okay, I'm also not a big believer in Darwin of itself. I think it's Darwin plus something, right? I'm not a big fan of the idea that Darwin explains all of human existence, or that we have explained that Darwin is okay. Life is solved. We figured it out. Let's move on. I don't believe that either. So with that reservation in mind, it does appear as though we were wired to think in order to survive. So it's like, why do humans think? Why do we think so much? Well, because it helped us survive. Well, here we are in 2019, and survival is pretty much taken care of 99.9% of the time. Even our poor are not likely to starve to death, right? Even our homeless are not likely to starve to death. So we have this enormous brain capacity for survival, and it's not being used for that as much as it used to be. So now we can think thoughts like, what is thinking itself? Like, what is squirrel? Like, that's a joke that came up first hour, is like, what is a squirrel? Like, what is that? Are we aliens? Like, these are kind of funny and comical in a way, but sometimes they're a little bit serious. And because our brains are not being needed as much for survival reasons, we have the luxury, as wealthy people. You and I are fantastically wealthy. As wealthy people, we have the luxury of treating thinking a little bit more like a hobby. All right, it's if you're having trouble making ends meet and you're starving, it's absolutely dumb to ask what is squirrel, unless you mean like how do you skin a squirrel to eat it. Like, what is squirrel? What is metacognition? What is free will? Does a squirrel have free will? Those are all very silly questions that have no place in a society that's in the process of dying, or might be dying, or is worried about survival. So when you guys notice correctly that thinking can get you in trouble, that's a rich person's problem to some degree. It's the problem of the rich to overthink and to think that. All right, I'm filming a video. I'll go see him later. To think to the point of exhaustion about what the meaning of life is and whether or not we're aliens, to think to the point of anxiety and exhaustion, that's rich people problems. The people trying to figure out, how am I going to pay the bills tomorrow? What credit card can I consolidate to save the APR percentage in order to make my family float for an extra week? You're not thinking about you're not thinking about aliens at that point. Okay. So, yeah, overthinking is a rich person's problem. Again, there's a case that can be made for that. So let's talk about rhetorical analysis. What is the satire version of this is what do you mean by the word the? And I know that we never did that. We never actually asked what the word the means, but it gets to the heart of an issue. It's like using our rich brains. We have so much free time. I know it doesn't feel like that to you guys, but sitting in class in the air conditioning, studying Catcher in the Rye is free time. We have so much free time. We'd be like, what did Salinger mean by red? Why not blue? Okay. That's luxury time. When you guys leave school or leave college and you go off to make ends meet at your work, you're not going to think about Catcher in the Rye's red hat. Most of you aren't going to be thinking about stuff like that anymore. I can stay in this realm because I chose to be a teacher. I can think about Catcher in the Rye until I'm 65. So think about being a teacher if you like this sort of thing. All right. One other interesting idea is the concept that civilization itself versus tribalism. Tribal nomadic life is not civilization. Civilization requires a lot of lying, and we talked about that first hour. Very few. It's in civilization we sometimes lie to each other, oftentimes lie to each other in order to keep civilization glued together like one big happy family. We tell people that they're fine when really we don't like them. Just keep things very simple. And that because we live in close proximity and we can't move very easily. Okay. So one of the side effects of civilization is that we all use polite speech and we say nice things and we never really just tear. It's not as likely that we just tear into people and tell them how we really think. We suppress our id and we use our super egos to filter out how we truly think. And the side effect of civilization is, to some extent, you get shallow, feelingless people because you can't feel things very strongly without upsetting people. If you make a statement that you like blue, someone who says, well, why not yellow, right? That's something that came up first hour too. Well, that's the side effect of a civilization. Remember, there's good and there's bad things for everything, in everything. There's a silver lining in bad things, and there are bad things in good things. There's a snake in the garden. In tribal life, in nomadic tribal life, the civilized people call these people barbarians because they don't like them. But barbarians actually have a very interesting life. For one thing, they don't lie to each other as much. They're much more blunt, much more brutal, much more to the point. They say what they think and what they feel. I might have the nickname Big Head if I was in a tribal life because they just tell me, that's who you are. That's my nickname. That's just what it is. And the reason for that is because you can be more honest in tribal life because you can just get up and leave to a much greater extent. You can just leave society if you don't like it. So you can be much more blunt. I don't have enough time to elaborate on the idea of lies and civilization because I'm running low on time. Maybe I'll cover that a different time. I did a bad job here in the last minute. Sorry.